Hello, friends. This will be an interesting episode. It was first coming through, and I had some other things going on, and I wasn't able to record it at the time due to environmental circumstances. So I started taking some notes. So I'll have some notes to read on what was coming through from Spirit. I don't always do this. Sometimes I'm just in the flow, but it was coming through. So I'll get to it. This is definitely going to be considered maybe a touchy or tense subject due to some beliefs that people might hold, as this video is on Satan. And I don't spend a lot of time on Satan, to be honest. I listened to a podcast a while back, and this woman was talking about, she was offering a different perspective of Satan, saying that I'd love to credit the source. If I can find the source, I will put the link in the description. She was saying that her understanding of Satan was that Satan wasn't some big bad person or entity, but instead offered, almost in a form of a sacrifice, offered himself to be that expression and disconnect of God, so that people may have that tool in order to grow in contrast, because you need to experience other things in order to understand what something is. If all you ever saw was blueness, you wouldn't really know that what you were looking at was blueness until you saw pink. You know what I mean? So if all you ever were was love and peace and harmony and connection, you might not recognize it, like a fish in water. Until the fish is removed, the fish realizes really quickly, when the fish is removed, how it's been living in this source of sustenance, that being water in that expression. And that's a helpful analogy to use for us, because we are divine, and we are swimming in divine. And the carnal mind / ego / Satan allows us the opportunity to experience other than that, so that we may understand the greater value and grow in understanding of what divinity actually is. Those are my words. That's me paraphrasing. Maybe it's me paraphrasing too. I'll have to look up the definition for that word. All right. So, is Satan misunderstood? That's our kind of contemplation. We'll examine it by discussing and using and validating using the laws of consciousness and creation, the law of creation as a measuring stick. In a previous video, Spirit said to me, all is divine. We only misunderstand this because we allow the carnal mind to interpret things. It's the carnal misinterpretation of things that suggests that things aren't divine. All is divine, Spirit said. All. It didn't say all except for Satan is divine. Does God make mistakes? Would an all-knowing being make a mistake? Spirit says, notice when you resist sensations in the body due to the carnal mind's interpretation, how that creates illness, how that resistance creates illness. And we may heal those sensations by not allowing ourselves to carnally minded or egoistically interpret those sensations. So the resistance is in the mind. And when we look at something that's perceived as ill, and we change our mind about it, it allows us divine expression. And the reason Spirit's bringing that up is because this is what people are doing to Satan. Their misinterpretation of what Satan is. There's those projections, those projections of the misinterpretation of the carnal mind is creating this expression that seems to validate that Satan is this big bad being that lacks divinity. It's our mind, it's our perception that's projecting that onto something else. Remember, the carnal mind can misunderstand hate for love and misunderstand love for hate. It's not an accurate interpreter because it doesn't have the ability to discern divinely. So it miscasts all of these opinions and suggestions about things. And if we aren't aware of what the carnal mind is and don't have any connection to our deeper self, our higher self, our spirit, we have no choice but to be subjected to being misled about discerning these things, including Satan. Spirit brings up another example. In the psychic world, they say, do not play, especially when you first begin, only intend to connect to beings in love and light. And that's a great idea for protection and safety, and I still use that to this day. However, I hear so many stories of people who don't practice those things, and the reason some of them don't put that intention to only connect to beings in love and light is because they're already standing in their divinity. Because they know that if they run into anything else, anything in this world, in consciousness, that their divine consciousness themselves can transmute it. And that oftentimes it's somebody's misperception that an entity or a being or another form of consciousness is negative, when it's our fearful carnal mind misinterpreting that consciousness to be negative. When it could be seeking for help, it could be seeking for transition, it could be seeking for transcendence. And it's in our experience because we can provide that if we're divinely aware in that moment, if we're conscious, if we're standing in our power. So we can transmute it. So there's really no reason to fear anything in that manner if you're conscious, if you're mindful, standing in your power and applying your divine expression. All right, I'm just reading what I've written down here. So if I repeat some of the things, it's because I didn't proofread this stuff. If all is truly divine, Satan is divine. If we can determine something's effect on our own experience based on whether we interpret it spiritually or carnally, that applies to Satan as well. Spirit says atheists do a similar thing with God. That doesn't take away God's divinity, just because an atheist might misunderstand God, by the way. And just because a Christian might misunderstand Satan doesn't take away Satan's divinity. Wow. That doesn't take away God's divinity away from God. But their carnal mind's interpretation creates an experience that would validate an expression that could be interpreted as there not being a God. Perception is very important. We create our own empowerment or disempowerment by choosing either Spirit's perception or the carnal mind's perception. So as we see Satan through our beliefs, this is how Satan manifests himself or itself in our world, in our experience. Because thought precedes creation. And if that's where our thought, that doesn't make Satan as that individual being those things. But our perception makes it so for us to experience. Thought precedes all creation. That's in our world. Our thought precedes all of our creation. This is what manifestation is, friends. And if we're projecting negative interpretations onto another being, that is our muck. That is our misinterpretation. All is truly divine, unless you allow for the carnal mind's limited misperceiving, disconnected, ignorant interpretation to define things for you. Is there any value to fear? Because people fear Satan. Is there any value to fear? Is there any spiritual value to fear? The carnal mind will come up with an infinite amount of suggestions on why fear is valuable. I'm not interested in the carnal mind's interpretation. What does the Spirit say? Is there any value to fear? Does it serve you? Does it promote your betterment? Does it promote the betterment of those that you project it onto? No. Examine it though. Examine it though. Is there any value in love? Does expressing love empower you and promote your betterment? Does expressing love to somebody else promote their empowerment and their betterment? Yes. What does Jesus say to do to your enemy? Love your enemy. Because there's no benefit in fear. There's no benefit in hate. When you love them, you offer the potential to transform them. Love is an energy. But not only that, you are transforming and instilling love in your own self, in your own experience. You are creating it, you are manifesting it by having that thought in the first place. That's what you're creating, that's what you're manifesting. Thought precedes creation. So if you think a fearful thought, what are you creating? If you think a loving thought, what are you creating? Would it serve you? If thought precedes creation, what serves you better? To hate Satan or to love Satan? You get what you give. Like it or lump it. Truth doesn't bend to your preference. So these are just some things to contemplate in regards to Satan. Personally, in my mind, I don't hold anything as an enemy. And the reason I don't hold anything in my mind as an enemy is because I've, to this point, examined my experience, and I know that interpreting anything as my enemy does not serve me, and it does not serve them. Thinking of something as an enemy affirms that it is an enemy. That's what you are manifesting. Does that serve you? Does that serve you? Does it serve you to manifest enemies? Because that's what you'd be doing. There's no room for hate. There's no room for judgment. There's no room for condemnation if you are not trying to manifest those things. And those are all manifestations of the carnal mind, of disconnect. And the reason people manifest those sorts of things is because in the moment that they're creating, they're disconnected and they're allowing for the carnal mind's interpretation to direct them instead of surrendering it and allowing for divine expression. Okay? Hopefully the reason I felt this was important is because I know that a lot of friends who I have who are Christian, who may not be open to these anyways, but these type of understandings aren't really out there too much that I see. They're always looking back. They're always scared about Satan. They're always looking back, always looking back, always looking back. And when you're looking away from God, you're not looking at God. What are you creating? Your thoughts are preceding your manifestation. If you're so fearful that you're always looking back, you're creating experiences to be fearful of. Step into your divinity. You don't have to worry about Satan. You don't have to be worried about these carnal-minded suggestions. Stand in your divinity. See how your experience changes. See how try and go a day without fearing things and replace it with just divine faith and trust and expression. See how your experience changes. That's a direct validation of your manifestation/creation ability and power. If you do this enough, you'd become way less tolerant of anything negative, any negative interpretations, because you'd see it doesn't serve you. You're creating it. You're creating it by allowing its ideas to be considered and invested in, and responding to and directing, taking direction from the carnal mind. You're creating that resistance. You're creating that disconnect. You're creating that suffering. You don't have to. But until you really understand how to do this, it can seem difficult. Understand this, though. It wasn't intended to be difficult, and it's not created to be difficult. We can achieve the same understandings by just removing the stimulation from our minds and stop distracting ourselves, and the understanding's innate. The Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." Still your beingness. Still your beingness. Still your consciousness. And examine. You are the creator. Creation comes from you. Thought precedes your manifestation. Examine it. Be with it. Contemplate it. Investigate it. Examine it. That's introspection. And as you become to know yourself at a greater depth, you can see how the interpretation that Satan is undivine and negative and all these types of things does not fit. It doesn't fit the carnal mind's interpretation. All right, so I'll close this episode there for now, friends. If you're interested in guidance, you can contact me in the email left in the description. If you're interested in joining our social media communities, the links for those are in the description as well. Stay blessed. Talk soon.